Hello. In this video, we are going to make the player jump in our Dragon World game. All right, so we've already done some key handling for moving left and right. So I'm going to do something pretty similar to that. So I think I'll go before the on key down to the right. This looks like a good spot. Now in this kind of Kaboom code that we're writing, sometimes it doesn't really matter whether some code goes before or whether it comes after, but then sometimes it does. So I can choose to put it here, I could choose to put it here, but the important part is that I don't put it inside of functions where it's not supposed to be. So if I'm going to handle pressing the space bar, that should really only be inside the game function. I don't want to put that inside the left function because then it would be left and spacebar. Um, so even though I have some flexibility, I still want to make sure that I'm more or less in the right place. So I'm going to use the on key press function to capture when I press the spacebar. So quotes space, then comma, or the arrow function, parens arrow curly braces. All right, so when I press the space bar, then I want to jump. So player dot jump is a function. All right, and then so that should at least make the player jump when I press the space bar. So it does seem to jump way too high. So I might want to set this down to a lower number. So maybe if I pick like 300 or something. And yeah, that seems about right. Can't quite get to the top of that. 350. Okay, yeah, so that seems about right. Now I don't love that I just hard coded a number here, so I think I would like to reach for making that a variable. And there is a property we could do in body, but I just want to go with this idea of like making custom variables. So I have a speed variable here. If I want to make another one, then I'm going to add, um, call it jump, maybe call it jump speed. How about that? I have jump speed, colon, and then I'll set it to that 350. That way down here I can say something like player dot jump speed. So I can use those dot properties. So this just adds another dot property to my player here. So this should work. Right. Yeah, and I was almost tempted to call this jump force, but that already exists in Kaboom actually. Or just jump is a function, so that already existed. I had some issues with this as I was testing it, so I went with jump speed here. So just know if you're having some really strange issues, it might be because the variable name that you picked collides with a variable that already exists or a function that already exists, even if it's a variable. Um, so I ended up with picking this name because of I was having very strange things happen. Yeah, so now it's possible, if I drink a potion that lets me jump higher, or if I've leveled up, I guess I've earned some kind of XP boost, then this could be a variable now. But the problem is that I can jump forever, so I want to limit double jumping here. Right now, it's simply the case that if I press the space bar, player can jump. So I want to use an if statement to make that conditional. Maybe I can jump. So if, now players have that is grounded function. So I could say player dot is grounded parens. That will tell me true or false, are you on the ground? Because that's the only moment I should be able to jump. So then for if statements, I'm going to open up the curly braces here. And I'm going to take this player.jump stuff and throw that inside the if statement. That way now that's controlled by whether the player is grounded or not. Double jump has to wait until I touch the ground again. We did some animation um, with moving and everything, with moving right and left. And I think that would be fun to try to get an animation on the jump. And it just so turns out that the player does have a third animation. Now it's called hit, but I think it looks really good for jump. So the only reason that exists is if I look in the atlas.json. I mean, it's in the image to begin with, but there is a third animation called hit. I could change the name of this. I could actually even copy and paste it and rename it jump if I wanted to, but I'm just going to leave it like this. So I could use that. So if the player is grounded, all right, player.jump, and then also, so inside those curly braces, player.play, parens quotes hit. Get this. Yeah, so he kind of like, he does a jump up, but then he's stuck in the splits. So just like we had to do with the moving, how I had to return to idle, somehow I need to return the player to idle when it's not jumping anymore. But it's not going to be an on-key release because I want to return to idle when he lands and touches the ground. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with my key. So I actually want to do a collide. When the player collides with the wall piece, with the ground pieces there, that's when um, that should happen. Yeah, I don't know if there's a different function. I'm kind of curious. If I search for ground, I might find something like this. Is grounded on. Oh, well, this is kind of nice. Run something when Froggy falls and hits a ground. So maybe I could just use this function, or I could do a collide with the wall. So I might use that, but I'm gonna stick with some of the tools we already have. So I'm going to say player dot on collide. I'm going to use the on collide function specifically for the player. So on colliding with quotes wall, just because that is the tag name for all of these things. If I look up to where W is defined, there are things with a tag called wall, and I could rename them or whatever. But so player on colliding with a wall, comma, and then an arrow function. So parens arrow and curly braces. Right, so what should happen then when the player collides with the wall? And then I should say player.play, parens quotes idle. It does that when I jump, but then when I land again, it returns to the idle animation. Because the on collide only happens as you start to collide with something. So this is what I want.